And this one's a really special one because this is coming from the same team and designers that brought you the game Mindbug, which also happens to be one of my favorite, if not my favorite, head-to-head card battler. I think this offers a ton of punch in a small package, and it's the most refined card battler that I've ever played. But what I love about Final Titan is that this is offering a completely different experience, but I also might like it just as much as Mindbug. They've definitely done it again here, and for that reason, this is my own personal pick of the week. And this is one that I can say with confidence because they were kind enough to send me a prototype copy of the game, and I have played the game multiple times already, and I will be playing it a lot more because this is a game that has a ton of replayability because there's just so many different characters and combinations that you can try, and it's a game that's super easy to teach and play, and anytime that you play this, I guarantee you will want a rematch, and you'll be playing this multiple times throughout the night. What's also really interesting about this game is that on its surface it has some mechanisms that normally I am not super fond of, like player elimination, as well as randomness through rolling a die to determine your success or failure. But the game plays quick enough that if you are eliminated, it's not that far from the end of the game. And also the game plays in such a way that you will be rooting for one of the other players because you'll want them to enact your revenge. And although it might seem like you're just rolling a die to determine your attack, and that might be true, but there's just so much more nuance and decision going on with everything else involved in the battle. You're going to feel like more of a manager of a team, creating your lineup of fighters and sending them out at the right time depending on their opponent and which of your fighters you think will best nullify your opponent's strengths or exploit their weaknesses. Players can also get different tokens and cards that can grant them with some special effects or abilities, and this is all going to come into play with your decision making and how that combines with your characters and how your various characters combo together. But like I said, the publisher was kind enough to send me a prototype copy of the game, so I think the best way to show this game off is to just show you how the game actually plays. And the reason this game is called Final Titan is because this is a King of the Hill style game where there's always going to be one character in the game acting as the current Titan. Once a player's character becomes the Titan, it normally stays there until it is defeated by another character, and then that character would be taking its place. As I mentioned, there are a ton of different characters offered in this game, and they all have different abilities and effects, and pretty much every rule in this game can be broken in one way or another. But before we get too far into the gameplay here, I just want to mention that I currently have this set up for 3 different players, and you normally would each have 4 different characters in your roster, but because of my limited player space here, I'm just going to show off 3 because I think that is more than enough to show you how this game plays. And I just randomly dealt these characters out, which is a way that you can play the game, but you can also do an open drafting as well. Drafting the characters does make it more competitive, but I personally prefer just the random draw because it is quicker to set up, and because this game does introduce the randomness of the dice roll. It's always fun to hope for the upset and see the underdog win. That being said, I haven't played a game yet where I felt like one player was way more overpowered than the rest. There's definitely individual cards that seem really overpowered when they first make their way into the combat area, but what you'll soon find out is that a lot of these characters seem overpowered in their own individual ways, and that is just one of the things I love about this game. These are my 3 characters here, and each of them do have some different stats and effects. Characters can have different abilities that get triggered at different points in the game. For example, this one grants me with a dodge token at the start of each fight. Each of the characters can also have an ultimate, which can trigger some powerful instant effects, or even an ultimate form, which can also trigger instant effects, but this one persists, usually giving you some sort of special ability as long as you are in that form. The different values down here represent the amount of damage you do depending on the value you roll on the die. Each of these could also have an icon associated with it, which can allow you to do things like steal health from your opponent or grant you with an additional action. Some of the other characters can actually feature a bench power, which is in effect as long as they are not the current one in battle and as long as they're still alive. And these can cause all sorts of different effects, which could affect all players or maybe just affect your character that's currently in battle, or it might just grant you with some sort of bonus as long as you keep that character on your bench. In addition to your characters, each player is also dealt 3 different upgrade cards at the beginning of the game, and they can grant you with all sorts of different effects. And players will be simultaneously revealing these at the start of each battle, and if you are able to survive battles, or if you have the right abilities, you can get more of these into your possession. And I think we're good to get into some fights now. And the way that this game starts is that each of the players are going to be looking at each of their character's speed, and whichever player has the character with the highest speed is going to be the player that goes first. Both myself and my player on the left here have a character with the speed of 10, which is the highest value. So in that case, we would be tied. So we would just look at our next fastest character, and theirs is a 9 and mine is an 8, which means that they would start as the Titan. They can choose whichever character they want to start out as the Titan, and this is a big part of the strategy in the game. They don't have to use the one that is the quickest. But before we do jump into the first battle, there's a couple things we have to do. First of all, whichever player begins the game as the starting player does get an additional upgrade card, and also all the players will want to look at the abilities of their characters and see if they have any start of game effects. This character does, and their ability grants their player with 2 dodge tokens, which are really nice because you can spend them anytime that one of your characters is going to take damage to instead take no damage. But I think the character they're going to put into play first is going to be the Gunslinger, and the reason for that is because they have a really nice ability of Quick Draw, which allows them to deal 3 damage at the start of a fight, and they do have quite a bit of health. And this player does also have this bench power, which deals 2 damage anytime that a charge is rolled, which is a special icon on the die. And also, since that player has those 2 dodge tokens, they think that they can keep this character in through multiple fights, allowing them to take advantage of their quick draw multiple times. Since this player is going first, we go clockwise to see who their opponent is, and it would be this player here, but they're looking at the whole situation over here and feeling very intimidated because this player has a lot going on. And you do have the option to be a coward in this game and pass the battle on to the next player, hopefully, which this player would really like to do. The only way you can do this is if you have some of these upgrade cards in your possession, which we all do have at the beginning of the game, but you're going to be picking one of those, probably the one that you feel is the least useful to you, and then you're going to be putting that into a pool in the center. Let's say they chose to do that, so they get to keep their other 2 for now, but they are giving this one up in order to pass the battle on to me. But I have some of these as well, and if I also really don't want to jump into this battle right now, or if I have a card here that I don't think is particularly useful to me, I could add that card to this pool to pass the battle on to the next player, which would just go back to this player over here. The catch here is that the more cards that get added into this pool, the more valuable that pool becomes, and whichever player does decide to take on the battle gets to claim these cards. This means that you sometimes might do this just to pass it on to the other player in the hopes that they also pass back to you, so that you net yourself an additional card. But I ain't no coward and I'm ready for a fight, so I'll take this card and I'm going to choose one of my characters to go up against this Titan. If they roll a fist, they're going to be doing 4 points of damage, so that's pretty scary. If they roll the claw, then they're going to be doing 2 points of damage and also getting an additional roll, so that's also scary. And because of the bench power over here, if they happen to roll the charge icon, that also is going to do 2 damage to me. I haven't explained the way that the charge works, but this is essentially the way that you activate your ultimate or your ultimate form. And the first time that you roll your charge, you're going to be flipping your charge token over to its other side. And if you roll the charge a second time when this is already flipped up, then that's going to be instantly activating the effect of your ultimate. Or if you have an ultimate form, instead it's going to be granting you this ultimate form token, which indicates that you are now in your ultimate form. Whenever there's a battle, there's always going to be one Titan and there's always going to be one challenger. Unfortunately for me, I don't have any bench powers that I can take advantage of, but this character does counter the claws, so that's pretty nice. And they do also gain a dodge token at the start of the battle. And they do have a couple nice bonuses down here where if I roll the karate chop, I also get to roll the die again. And if I roll the fist, I also get to perform the siphon action, which heals me equal to the amount of damage I've done. Their ultimate is pretty sweet as well because it's going to deal 4 fists, which could actually deal up to 8 damage and then heal me that amount as well. But because we know that they have some dodge tokens, they're probably going to dodge that, so I don't know if I will be able to land that, but I think we're going to try our luck with this character and see how we do. And the first thing that the players do when they start a fight is choose their upgrade cards, and because my speed is higher than my opponent's, I get to choose mine first, but these are going to be going face down, but I am going to be using 3 of them. And then they're going to be choosing their upgrade cards. And they're going to be playing these 2 cards, but we can just go ahead and reveal everything now. And I played the Shadow Step, which will get me a dodge token. I played the Gorgon's Gaze, which prevents my opponent from ever re-rolling the die more than once on their turn. And the reason I did that is because they do have this special ability when they roll the Claw that allows them to roll the die again, so this would prevent that from happening. And finally, I have the Inner Focus, which allows me to set my first roll as a charge, which will get me 1 step closer to my ultimate. My opponent played the Hex, which allows them to discard one of my upgrade cards, which isn't great for me. And then they also played the Bag of Tricks, which allows them to return one of their other upgrade cards back to their hand, because normally these would get discarded. So I think they don't want me to get a dodge token, so they're going to be sending that one to the discard pile, and then because they have the Bag of Tricks, they get to get that Hex back to their hand, but the Bag of Tricks does also get discarded. For the other 2, I like to just slide them under the character card so we remember that we have those effects for this battle. And because I do have the higher speed, I do get to attack first, but before we do that, we need to resolve any start of fight effects. And my character does have one, which allows me to gain a dodge token, so that's pretty nice. And my opponent has their quick draw as well, which is going to allow them to inflict 3 damage immediately. And that's not great for me because I only have 5 health, but we do have the dodge token if things get hairy. And because I played the card that allows me to set my first roll as a charge, I am going to do that, so let's throw this with the charge side up. And the nice thing about that is anytime you flip this up to its charge side, that also does grant you with an additional roll. So let's see what we can do here. And we've activated our ultimate immediately here, which would normally do a ton of damage, but of course our opponent does have these dodge tokens and they are not going to allow that to happen, so they are going to dodge. And now this flips back to its other side, and our opponent is going to be rolling their die. And they have rolled the Devil Horns, and I can't take that damage, so I'm also going to be using my dodge token. Now it comes back to us. Let's see what we can respond with. Another charge, so we get to roll again. Let's see if we can actually do some damage here. Karate Chop for 1 damage, and it's not terrible because that also does grant us another roll. And we have gotten the Karate Chop again, so we're going to be dealing another damage, and that grants us with another roll. And I will take it. Let's roll this again. And yes, there is a side that rolls blank, but we did do 3 damage, so that's not terrible. And let's see what our opponent responds with. And they got the Claw, which is actually really good for us. So it does 2 damage, but we actually have a small detail here on our character that says that we counter the Claw. And because we counter it means that it's going to be doing no damage to us instead. And even though this has a tiny little die here that says they get to re-roll when they roll the Claw, because we played this card that says they can only roll the die once on their turn, they do not get to roll that again. So this means that we are still alive here. And we have rolled the Fist, and it's only 2 damage, and our opponent has 7 health left, so it's not a huge threat to them, but they know if they allow me to do that damage, then I'm going to be healing too, because this does have the life drain associated with it. So for that reason, they will use their last dodge token to avoid that attack. So this is going to be going back to our opponent, and let's see what they do. And this is actually good for us because this does grant them a charge, and like I said, when you flip this over to its charge side, that does grant you with another roll, but it's the same thing here as the last turn. Because we played this card that only allows our opponent to roll once on their turn no matter what, they do not get that additional roll. But I think we're still dead here because they do have that benched character with the bench power that allows them to do 2 damage anytime that they roll a charge. This character gets discarded, but everything else pretty much remains the same. This character keeps any of their tokens, and their current health does persist into the next battle. But the one catch here is that their charge does get reset, so they will be losing that. And they will be going into the next battle because they have successfully defended their place as the Titan. And the next player to fight would be the player to the left of me, but because that's currently the Titan, you just skip over to the next player, which brings us back to the third player over here. And now they get to decide once again if they want to enter the battle and fight this Titan now that I've damaged him and got rid of all of his dodge tokens. Or they could choose to be a coward once again because they still do have 2 of these upgrade cards that they could use to pass the battle on to me. But I think they will fight this time because they have this character that has 10 health and also can deal a nice amount of damage. And also they have a special ability here that allows them to play 2 cards from the top of the upgrade card deck instead of using theirs, which is nice because it's just going to essentially grant them with 2 free cards. This character still does have the higher speed, so they would play their cards first. But you do also have the option not to play any cards, and I think they will save those for a future battle. But for the War Golem here, they just draw 2 from the top of the deck. You don't have a choice, so they are going to do that, and we can just go ahead and reveal those. And these cards actually aren't too bad for them because this one's going to gain them +5 speed, which will allow them to be the first attacker in this battle, which wouldn't have been the case otherwise since they do have the lower speed. And also they have this sharpshooter card, which allows them to re-roll the die anytime that they do roll a miss, because yes, there is a blank side on these dice. Let's just slide them under here so we remember that we have those effects. And they're going to be rolling the first die, so let's see how they do. Not bad, they get a charge and they get to re-roll. And we instantly got our ultimate, which actually doesn't help us too much with this current battle, but it will help us in a future battle because it allows us to give an action token to one of our fellow characters out on the bench. And the Mind Bug here is pretty sweet because it can allow you to steal opponents' characters if you do activate their ultimate. So I think an extra action on the Mind Bug could be pretty powerful, so we will go ahead and do that. That's going to be resetting our charge, and it's going to be the other player's turn. And one thing I want to do before I forget is that they do have the start of fight effect to deal 3 damage. So let's make sure we add a token for that, but now it's going to be their turn to roll the die. And they have rolled the Karate Chop, which only does 1 damage, and now it is back to us. Lots of Karate Chops this game, and that's also only going to do 1 damage. 3 more damage on the War Golem, and now we get to roll again, and I rolled a blank, but lucky for us, when we roll a miss, we get to re-roll the die. And that's nice for us because we do 4 damage, and they don't have any dodge tokens left, so they are getting pretty close to death here. But now it's their turn, and they have rolled the Claw, which does 2 damage, and also allows them to roll again. And they have rolled the Karate Chop, which is 1 damage on us. And I think we can wipe them out here with another fist. And when you defeat the Titan, you just flip your token over because you have now become the new Titan. They get eliminated and permanently removed from the game. The surviving player does lose their upgrade cards. One thing I forgot to mention on the last battle is that the winning player does also gain an additional upgrade card. And I think we'll do one more battle here since it does come back to me, and I think I will throw the Hydra into the mix here. So my Hydra is able to counter fists, which is really nice because their fist is really powerful. And when I do counter it, I do get to gain an action token, which is really nice because I can spend those to perform additional rolls on my turn. I have 10 health, but only 3 speed, but I think we're going to be okay here because they only have 2 health left, so we are definitely going to wipe them out. But at the beginning of our battles, we do need to play our upgrade cards. And for the War Golem, it's the same as last time. They're not actually allowed to play the upgrade cards from their hand. They just have to draw randomly from the top of the deck, which is nice because it still does get them free cards, even if they don't get to pick what they are. And my last card isn't very good for me right now, so I'm just going to hang on to that. So let's reveal what our opponent has. And they got Sharpshooter again, which allows them to re-roll the die if they miss. And an Armor, which is going to reduce the damage by 1 for every attack I'm able to inflict on them. But they are the faster one here, so they get to go first. So let's see how they do. And they have activated their charge, and they get to re-roll. And a Karate Chop, so nothing too crazy. And let's see what we got. And a Fist, which is going to do 4 damage minus the 1 for the Armor, which is going to be 3, which is still enough to wipe them off this world. So this character is eliminated, and we can send them back to the graveyard. My character becomes the new Titan, and then the next player becomes the Challenger. But I think that's enough to show you how the game plays. The rounds just continue like this, with someone challenging the Titan, and then players using their upgrade cards to prepare for the battle. And whenever you're a challenger, you're always going to want to send in the character that you think can exploit your opponent's weaknesses the best. There are some other tokens that you didn't get to see through this little playthrough here, and that's the poison token, which is going to inflict 1 damage every time it is that player's turn. Then there's the power token, which is going to add an additional damage to each of your attacks. Just playing against myself here is only a small taste of what this game has to offer, because I think so much more is introduced when you do have the different dynamics of other players at the table. Even when it's not your turn, you're always going to be rooting for one player or another, whether it's because the other player humiliated you in a previous battle, or because you know one of those characters currently in the battle is particularly strong against your set of characters and you'd really like to see them wiped out. There's a lot more to the decision making once you have 4 different fighters to choose from, whereas I was just showing you 3 here. And those decisions of when to use your action tokens or your upgrade cards, or maybe just pushing your luck with what you have, can all be very pivotal and game changing if you have a decent strategy and a little bit of luck on your side. And if you survive long enough to be the last player standing, then that means you have won the game, and I definitely recommend checking this one out and giving it a play if you do have the opportunity. I've had a lot of fun with this one, and I'm hoping to play it again this weekend. Check it out if you're interested, and I will have a link in the description down below.